Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist, meticulously documented a psychological phenomenon so unsettling that he deemed it among the most profound and challenging shifts in human nature he had ever witnessed. His case files, gathered over decades at his Zurich clinic, revealed a disturbing pattern, especially among empaths, the individuals naturally attuned to the emotions of others. These were people who initially appeared gentle, even broken, worn down by the weight of the world and the burdens they carried for those around them. But Jung observed that beneath this seemingly fragile exterior lay a dormant power, a potential for transformation so radical that it could reshape not only their own lives but also challenge the very foundations of how we understand the human psyche. These are what I term the awakened ones. Jung's work mirrored the principles of shadow integration in empathic individuals. Here's what he unearthed, a revelation that continues to unsettle psychologists to this day. Kindness, in its purest form, is not synonymous with weakness. Rather, it can be a forge where incredible strength is in preparation. Within the walls of his Zurich clinic, Jung encountered a disturbing consistency. Patient after patient, often empaths, arrived bearing similar wounds. They had been systematically worn down, undermined, and even emotionally abused by those closest to them. People who professed love and care. They bore unexplained bruises and internalized the blame for their own unhappiness. A universal tendency to apologize for their very existence hung about them like a shroud. Jung meticulously documented this pattern, observing it across dozens of cases. These individuals had unknowingly spent their lives serving as emotional sponges, absorbing the pain, anger, and dysfunction of everyone around them. They were, as I call them, the emotional shock absorbers of their social systems, bearing the brunt of other people's turmoil and suffering. They exemplified Jung's observations about how sensitive people often become repositories for collective psychological pain. But here's the part that truly made Jung's blood run cold. These empaths didn't simply endure abuse passively, they were unconsciously studying it. When Jung asked them to describe their relationships, he anticipated the scattered, confused thoughts of damaged minds. What he discovered, however, shattered his preconceptions about empaths and their capacity. These patients hadn't been broken by abuse. They had been dissecting it, analyzing it, and filing it away in the hidden recesses of their minds. Jung found that these empaths possessed detailed mental records of every person who had ever inflicted pain upon them. They knew their abusers' triggers, their deepest insecurities, and their hidden fears. They had mapped emotional patterns with surgical precision, understanding the subtle nuances of human behavior in ways that defied conventional explanation. Yet, they had never consciously used this knowledge, not even once, until something pushed them beyond their breaking point, triggering a profound and irreversible shift. Jung wrote about how the empath's mind operates not as a victim's diary filled with tear-stained entries, but as a strategist's war room, meticulously organized and waiting for the moment of activation. If you've ever felt like people consistently underestimate your awareness, write this in the comments. I see everything. Jung realized that he wasn't simply treating victims. He was sitting across from psychological geniuses in hiding, individuals whose hidden capabilities reflected Jung's theories about the advanced psychological functions that some people develop in response to specific life experiences. These empaths' genius didn't lie in artistic creation or intellectual pursuits. It lay in emotional archaeology. They possessed an uncanny ability to excavate people's deepest wounds simply by observing their micro-expressions, their subtle body language, and the unspoken cues that most people missed. Jung began testing their abilities, bringing in colleagues without revealing anything about them to the patients. Within minutes, these empaths could accurately identify childhood traumas, unhealthy relationship patterns, and deeply rooted professional insecurities. Their accuracy rate consistently exceeded 95%. Here's what made Jung's hands shake as he furiously scribbled in his notes. These empaths weren't psychic. They weren't tapping into some mystical realm of knowledge. They were simply paying attention at a level of detail and intensity that most humans never achieved. What others might dismiss as intuition, they recognized as meticulously gathered data, processed through a highly refined and sophisticated emotional intelligence. Jung started to understand something revolutionary about empaths. They don't just feel more deeply, they process emotional information faster and more accurately than anyone else. Their brains are, in essence, wired for pattern recognition in human behavior, allowing them to decipher the hidden motivations and unspoken agendas that drive human interactions. However, society had often taught these individuals that this extraordinary gift was a curse rather than a blessing. Every time they tried to voice what they saw, the lies, the manipulation, the hidden agendas, people dismissed them as being too sensitive or overly emotional. They learned to silence themselves, to doubt their own perceptions, and to apologize for seeing what others couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge. But the truth, as Jung recognized, doesn't simply disappear when you stop speaking it. It accumulates, festering beneath the surface, waiting for the moment when it can no longer be contained. And in these cases, it had been accumulating for decades, building up an immense reservoir of suppressed knowledge and insight. Jung observed how empaths don't lose their minds from feeling too much. They lose their minds from being told their feelings are wrong, from having their perceptions invalidated and their experiences denied. He realized that these patients weren't having nervous breakdowns. They were having breakthroughs, finally accessing a level of awareness and understanding that had been suppressed for far too long. Jung identified a consistent pattern across his empath cases. Their transformation didn't happen gradually, through a slow and incremental process of self-discovery. It happened in one explosive moment, a cataclysmic event that reflected what Jung understood about shadow integration under extreme duress. The trigger was almost always betrayal. Not just any betrayal, but a profound violation of trust by someone the empath had completely trusted, protected, and loved. In case after case, Jung documented the same heartbreaking scenario. The empath would discover infidelity, financial malfeasance, or insidious emotional manipulation at the hands of their closest confidant. What made it so devastating wasn't simply the act itself, but the crushing realization that they had seen the signs all along, that their intuition had been screaming at them, but they had chosen to ignore it, to rationalize it away, to give the benefit of the doubt. These patients did what empaths often do. They said nothing, absorbed the pain in silence, blamed themselves, and tried even harder to be the perfect partner, child, or friend, hoping that their unwavering love and support would somehow fix the situation. Then came the moment that changed everything, what I call the clarity event, when the empath's pattern recognition finally overwhelmed their desperate need to believe the best in people, embodied Jung's concepts about psychological awakening. Most people would expect empaths to react to such a betrayal with tears, screams, and emotional collapse. Their abusers certainly expected that too. They were prepared for emotional chaos, for a dramatic outburst that would allow them to further invalidate and control the empath's emotions. What happened instead was something that terrified everyone involved, including the empaths themselves. The empaths became unnaturally calm, their emotions suddenly shutting down as a cold, hard clarity descended upon them. Jung documented this as the pivotal moment when someone finally integrates their analytical capabilities with their emotional intelligence, when the heart and the mind align to reveal a truth that had been hidden for far too long. Jung observed across multiple cases what I would describe as the most chilling psychological transformation possible. These empaths didn't lash out in anger. They didn't seek revenge or try to inflict pain upon their abusers. They simply began to speak the truth, to reveal everything they had observed, catalogued, and silently endured, not with cruelty or malice, but with clinical precision, like surgeons identifying each diseased organ before carefully removing it to save the patient's life. This wasn't revenge, it was clarity. These empaths were finally using their extraordinary gift of complete perception, not to excuse inexcusable behavior, but to expose it for what it truly was, stripping away the lies, the justifications, and the carefully constructed facades. Jung's observations echoed the ancient wisdom that there is no fury like that of someone who has finally learned to trust their own perceptions, who has stopped doubting their intuition and embraced their inner knowing. Jung realized that this pattern across his cases wasn't simply about revenge. This was what he termed shadow integration, the critical moment when someone stops denying the parts of themselves they were taught to hide, when they embrace the aspects of their personality that had been deemed unacceptable or unworthy. The empath's shadow wasn't evil, malicious, or destructive. It was their suppressed intelligence, their silenced intuition, their denied strength, the very qualities that made them vulnerable to exploitation in the first place. When they finally integrated these aspects of themselves, when they embraced their full potential, they became what Jung called psychologically complete, whole individuals who could no longer be easily manipulated or controlled. Here's what made these cases so disturbing for Jung. The transformation was permanent. These patients didn't cycle back into people-pleasing behaviors, desperately seeking approval and validation from others. They didn't apologize for their newfound boundaries, for their refusal to tolerate disrespect or abuse. They didn't second-guess their perceptions anymore, trusting their inner knowing with unwavering certainty. They had become what Jung feared most, empaths who could no longer be manipulated, whose clarity and self-awareness made them immune to the tactics of emotional predators. The changes didn't stop at the psychological level. Jung documented how these individuals' entire lives transformed within months. They left abusive relationships with strategic precision, cutting ties cleanly and efficiently, without emotional drama or protracted negotiations. They severed contact with toxic family members, refusing to engage in the same dysfunctional patterns that had plagued them for years. They rebuilt their lives on their own terms, creating a reality that aligned with their values and honored their authentic selves. Jung observed them becoming what he called selectively empathetic, still deeply caring and compassionate, but strategically protective of where that care flowed, reserving their energy for those who truly deserved it. The most disturbing part for Jung was how these transformed empaths' mere presence affected others. People who had once walked all over them, taking advantage of their kindness and generosity, suddenly felt nervous and uneasy around them, unable to explain why. These empaths weren't aggressive or cruel, but everyone sensed that something had fundamentally changed, that the old rules no longer applied. Jung identified what he called the predator's instinct. Manipulative people can sense, often unconsciously, when their usual tactics won't work, when they are dealing with someone who can see through their games and is no longer willing to play along. They avoid integrated empaths like vampires avoid sunlight, instinctively recognizing that their power is nullified in their presence. Jung wrote, "The awakened empath doesn't need to announce their power, others can feel it in their bones." Comment if people started treating you differently when you found your backbone. They sensed the change before I even announced it. Jung's fascination with these empath cases went beyond mere professional interest. He was deeply disturbed because he recognized something profound in their transformation, something that mirrored his own personal psychological development. Jung himself was what we would now call a highly sensitive person, acutely aware of the emotions and energies of those around him. He understood the empath's journey from the inside, having experienced the pain of seeing what others couldn't see, feeling what others wouldn't feel. These cases forced him to confront a disturbing question. What happens when empaths stop being society's emotional shock absorbers and start using their extraordinary gifts strategically, consciously, and with unwavering intention? Jung spent years following these transformed patients' post-integration lives, tracking their progress and documenting the long-term effects of their psychological awakening. What he discovered kept him awake at night, pondering the implications of their newfound power. These individuals had become extraordinarily successful in their chosen fields. Their businesses thrived because they could intuitively read their clients' real needs before they even voiced them, anticipating their desires and exceeding their expectations. Their new relationships were healthy, balanced, and fulfilling because they could identify emotional predators within minutes, avoiding the pitfalls of toxic connections. Their decisions were consistently sound and well-informed because they trusted their intuitive intelligence completely, allowing it to guide them with unwavering certainty. Jung realized something that made his blood run cold. These empaths hadn't become less empathetic. They had become perfectly empathetic, which meant that they were also perfectly strategic, capable of manipulating others as easily as they had once been manipulated. They understood human psychology at a level that made them nearly omnipotent in social situations, able to influence outcomes and shape perceptions with astonishing ease. Here's what truly terrified Jung. These transformed empaths chose not to use this power destructively. They could have easily destroyed every person who had ever hurt them, dismantling their lives and exposing their darkest secrets. Instead, they simply removed toxic people from their lives, creating impenetrable boundaries and moving on without looking back, refusing to waste their energy on revenge or retribution. Jung realized that he had witnessed the birth of what he called the integrated empath, someone with both the extraordinary sensitivity to feel everything and the unwavering wisdom to choose what deserved their energy. Someone who could navigate the complexities of human relationships with grace, strength, and unwavering self-awareness. Jung's private notes reveal his profound amazement. "I have observed something beautiful and terrible. These individuals have become what every manipulator fears most. Someone who can see through them completely, but no longer needs anything from them. If you've reached the point where you can read people but no longer need their approval, right? I see you, but I don't need you." These empath transformations didn't happen in isolation. Jung documented how their changes rippled outwards, affecting every system they had been a part of, disrupting the established order and forcing those around them to adapt. Family dynamics collapsed, not because these individuals actively sought to destroy them, but because they stopped enabling dysfunction, refusing to participate in the same harmful patterns that had sustained the family for generations. Alcoholic family members were forced to face their addictions without empaths as convenient emotional dumping grounds, absorbing their anger and guilt. Depressed relatives had to find other sources of validation. no longer able to rely on the empath's constant reassurance and support. Manipulative siblings could no longer use these transformed empaths as psychological punching bags, knowing that their attempts at manipulation would be met with unwavering resistance. Here's what made Jung realize how truly powerful awakened empaths truly are. Their transformation forced everyone around them to evolve or reveal their true nature. The healthy people in their lives grew stronger from their example, inspired by their courage and self-awareness. The toxic people, on the other hand, exposed themselves through desperate attempts to pull these empaths back into old patterns, clinging to the familiar dynamics of manipulation and control. Jung observed something that reflects what I call the empath's mirror effect. These transformed individuals didn't have to actively confront people's dysfunction anymore. Their mere presence reflected issues back with uncomfortable clarity, forcing others to confront their own shadows and face the consequences of their actions. Manipulators couldn't stand to be around them. They felt exposed, seen through, unable to operate their usual psychological games. Meanwhile, authentic people felt safe and supported with these empaths for the first time, knowing that they could be their true selves without fear of judgment or manipulation. Jung's research showed that awakened empaths become living truth detectors, not through active judgment or condemnation, but through their unwavering presence, their ability to hold space for others without enabling their harmful behaviors. The most disturbing discovery came when Jung introduced these transformed patients to others in his practice, asking them to assess their psychological state and identify any underlying issues. Within minutes, they could accurately identify core psychological wounds and pinpoint the exact type of therapy needed to address them. Jung realized that these empaths' diagnostic accuracy surpassed his own decades of training, challenging his assumptions about the nature of expertise and the limitations of traditional psychological methods. This created an ethical dilemma that haunted him for years. If empaths could develop this level of psychological insight and intuitive understanding, what did that mean for the future of psychology itself? Was the traditional model of therapist as expert becoming obsolete? He began quietly studying other empaths in his practice, developing what I call the Integration Observation Protocol, a framework for understanding how this profound transformation occurs naturally without intervention or guidance. Jung's integration observation framework wasn't therapy in the traditional sense. It was psychological documentation of how empaths naturally developed what I call warrior consciousness after experiencing severe betrayal, a shift in perspective that allowed them to harness their sensitivity as a source of strength and resilience. Jung identified consistent stages across his cases. The first stage was recognition. Empaths learn to identify their suppressed shadow aspects, not just their anger and resentment, but also their intelligence, their strength, and their right to boundaries. These individuals stopped pathologizing their perceptions, no longer seeing their sensitivity as a weakness or a flaw. Instead, they started trusting their emotional intelligence as the sophisticated data processing system it actually was, recognizing its value as a source of insight and guidance. The second stage proved more intense: integration. Jung watched empaths merge their light and shadow aspects into what he authentically termed the complete self, a unified and balanced whole that embraced both their capacity for compassion and their ability to assert themselves with unwavering conviction. They became people who could be incredibly kind to those who deserved it and ruthlessly precise with those who didn't, offering their support and understanding to those who were genuine and holding firm boundaries against those who sought to exploit or manipulate them. The third stage, application, was what Jung found most fascinating. Integrated empaths learned to use their emotional intelligence strategically, not just defensively. They became what I describe as psychological architects, people who could read, influence, and navigate human systems with supernatural precision, understanding the hidden dynamics at play and using their influence to create positive change. Jung realized that these transformed empaths could no longer be victimized because they saw manipulation coming from miles away, detecting the subtle signs of deceit and neutralizing it before it could take root. These individuals didn't just heal themselves, they became immune to psychological abuse, developing an inner resilience that shielded them from the harmful effects of toxic relationships while maintaining their capacity for genuine love and connection. Jung's private notes reveal his profound amazement. I have observed the development of compassion paired with wisdom. These individuals are now among the most psychologically powerful people I have ever encountered. The process's final stage was what Jung understood as the natural return to service. Integrated empaths didn't become cold or disconnected, retreating from the world and isolating themselves from human connection. Instead, they became selectively generous with their gifts, using their abilities to help other empaths transform, creating what Jung documented as a network of psychologically resilient individuals, supporting each other's growth and creating a ripple effect of positive change throughout the world. Jung's work with these empath cases created ripple effects that continue to this day, challenging conventional wisdom and prompting a re-evaluation of the nature of sensitivity and its potential for transformation. He realized that empaths weren't mentally ill or inherently flawed. They were evolutionarily advanced individuals living in systems designed to exploit their gifts, their very sensitivity making them vulnerable to manipulation and control. Jung began seeing empathic sensitivity not as a disorder to be cured, but as a psychological capability to be properly understood and protected, a source of strength and resilience that could be harnessed for the betterment of humanity. He also recognized something concerning. In the wrong circumstances, these abilities could be devastating. An empath who integrated their shadow without proper ethical grounding could become extremely manipulative, using their intuitive understanding of human psychology to exploit others for their own gain. Jung developed what I call the ethical integration model, documenting how awakened empaths naturally use their powers for healing rather than harm, guided by a strong moral compass and a deep sense of responsibility. His case files on these transformations remained among his most closely guarded research, shared only with a select few trusted colleagues. He knew that if the wrong people learned how to deliberately trigger empath transformation, it could be weaponized, used to create highly effective manipulators and exploiters. Jung scattered his observations across multiple private journals, never publishing the complete findings during his lifetime, fearing that his research could be misused or misunderstood. Jung's final notes on these cases reveal something beautiful and hopeful. These individuals lived the rest of their lives as what I describe as balanced warriors, people capable of incredible gentleness with those who earned it and implacable strength against those who threatened it, protecting themselves and others with unwavering conviction. They became templates for what Jung believed was humanity's next evolutionary step, people who could feel everything without being destroyed by it, see everything without becoming cynical, and love deeply without losing themselves. Jung's last observation about these transformed empaths, written near the end of his career, was a testament to the power of self-awareness and the potential for human transformation. They proved that the empath's journey is not from sensitivity to numbness, but from unconscious absorption to conscious choice. They became not less empathetic, but perfectly empathetic. Jung left one final insight for future psychologists. Never underestimate someone who has learned to trust their own perceptions completely. The awakened empath represents psychology's most powerful evolution, a testament to the human capacity for resilience, self-awareness, and unwavering integrity. Comment if you've learned to trust your intuition completely. I no longer doubt what I see and feel. Jung's observations about awakened empaths proved prophetic in ways even he couldn't have imagined. Modern research confirms what his cases demonstrated. Empaths who undergo shadow integration become psychologically invincible, possessing an inner strength and resilience that defies conventional explanation. They can no longer be gaslighted because they trust their perceptions absolutely, refusing to be swayed by the opinions or manipulations of others. They can't be manipulated because they see emotional games before they're fully formed, recognizing the subtle signs of deceit and deflecting them with unwavering clarity. They can't be broken because they've already been to the bottom and emerged stronger, having faced their darkest fears and emerged with a newfound sense of self-awareness and purpose. Here's what makes Jung's case studies eternally relevant. Every empath will face their transformation moment, the betrayal so profound it forces them to choose between remaining a victim or becoming sovereign, between surrendering to the darkness or embracing their inner power. The question isn't whether the empath will snap, it's whether they'll integrate their shadow consciously, like Jung's documented cases, or let it consume them destructively, allowing their pain and resentment to fester and poison their lives. Jung's research revealed that most empaths, when pushed to their breaking point, choose integration, embracing their shadow aspects and harnessing their full potential. They don't become cruel or callous, losing their capacity for compassion. They become precise, wielding their emotional intelligence with unwavering clarity and intention. They don't lose their hearts, they gain backbones, developing the strength and resilience to protect themselves and others from harm. The transformed empath becomes what Jung called love with boundaries, someone who can care deeply while protecting themselves from exploitation and abuse, someone who can offer compassion without enabling harmful behaviors. Absolutely. Jung's final insight about these cases still resonates through psychology circles today. These individuals didn't become different people. They became who they always were beneath the conditioning, stripping away the layers of self-doubt and societal expectations to reveal their authentic selves. Every empath carries within them the potential to become psychologically untouchable, to develop an inner resilience that shields them from harm. It just takes the right catalyst, usually betrayal, to force that transformation, to ignite the spark of self-awareness and empower them to embrace their full potential. Jung wrote, "The empath's greatest tragedy isn't their sensitivity. It's how long they wait to honor it properly, how long they allow themselves to be silenced, manipulated, and exploited before finally recognizing their own worth and embracing their inner power." Remember where we started? Jung's documentation of a psychological pattern so disturbing he called it the most terrifying transformation in human nature. These weren't isolated cases. They represented a fundamental truth about empathic psychology, a hidden potential that lies dormant within each and every sensitive soul. Jung's research revealed something that still makes psychologists uncomfortable. Empaths aren't naturally victims. They're naturally powerful, possessing extraordinary gifts of perception, intuition, and compassion that can reshape the world. Society just teaches them to suppress that power in the name of being acceptable, forcing them to conform to norms that stifle their potential and make them vulnerable to exploitation. When empaths finally snap, they're not breaking. They're awakening to abilities they possessed all along, shedding the shackles of self-doubt and embracing their true selves. Jung's case files reveal the truth that manipulators don't want you to know. The kindest people are often the strongest people because kindness without strength enables dysfunction, perpetuating cycles of abuse and preventing healing. The awakened empaths Jung documented represent evolution in action, individuals who can feel everything and choose everything with complete consciousness, transforming their sensitivity into a source of strength and resilience. Jung spent decades studying patients who seemed gentle and broken until something inside them snapped, triggering a profound and irreversible shift. His research proved that the empath's journey isn't about becoming less sensitive, about numbing themselves to the pain and suffering of the world. It's about becoming consciously sensitive, about harnessing their emotional intelligence as a source of power and using it to create positive change. And consciousness, Jung realized, is what transforms victims into forces of nature, enabling them to reshape their lives and inspire others to do the same. The most beautiful part of Jung's findings: these transformed empaths never lost their capacity for love. They just learned to love themselves as fiercely as they once loved others, prioritizing their own well-being and setting healthy boundaries that protected them from harm. If you're an empath reading this, remember Jung's essential discovery: your sensitivity isn't your weakness, it's your weapon, a powerful tool that can be used to heal, inspire, and transform the world. And the day you learn to wield it consciously is the day you become truly powerful, not dangerous to innocent people, but dangerous to those who would exploit your gifts, to those who seek to manipulate and control you. That's exactly what the world needs more of. Empaths who know their worth, trust their perceptions, and refuse to dim their light for anyone's comfort, standing tall in their authenticity and using their gifts to create a more just and compassionate world. Jung's research left us with this profound question: not whether empaths will transform, but whether they'll do it consciously or let life force it upon them. Whether they'll embrace their potential or remain trapped in cycles of victimhood. Comment below: I choose conscious transformation if you're ready to become the integrated empath Jung documented, because the world doesn't need more broken empaths. It needs more awakened ones, individuals who can feel everything, see everything, and choose everything with unwavering clarity and intention. And Jung's research proves that transformation is not only possible, it's inevitable. The empath will snap. The only question is, will you direct that power or will it direct you? Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.